Which of the following is a possible solution for x? And you're given x to the third power minus 3x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 3. And for your answer choices you have A, 10, B, 3, C, -3, and D, -5. So right now, I want you to please pause this video and generate an idea on how you're going to solve this problem out or solve it out yourself. I want you to just take a look at it and think for a second. Something should ring to mind when looking at this problem, because you have a 4-term polynomial. So think factoring by grouping. And the first thing you should notice is that the equation is not set equal to 0. So let's set this equal to 0 by subtracting 3 from both sides of the equation. X to the third power minus 3x squared plus 5x minus 15 equals 0. Now, before going forward, be sure the equation is in descending order of degrees, meaning x to the third, x squared, x1, x to the 0 power. And we see it's x to the third, x squared, and x to the first power. So let's mark a check, because that's taken care of. And our next step is to use parentheses to group. And you're always going to group them in pairs in descending order of degrees. So we group the x to the third and x squared term, and x to the first power and the constant. And our next step is to add them together, which leaves us with parenthesis x to the third minus 3x squared and a parenthesis 5x minus 15. And notice the plus sign that exists between both groups. So our next step is to factor out the greatest common factors from each of the groups. Factoring out the greatest common factor, we have x squared times x minus 3 plus 5 times x minus 3, again, equals 0. And notice x squared is our greatest common factor. X squared is the highest factor that can go into x to the third and go into -3x squared. And if you take x squared and multiply it by x, you get x to the third. And if you take x squared and multiply it by -3, you get -3x squared. You also have a plus 5 as your other greatest common factor. And moving forward, what you want to do is rewrite for the 0 property, because everything is set equal to 0. And in rewriting, you're going to want to keep your x minus 3 group together. And for your second group, writing for the 0 property, you want to take the x squared, which was the greatest common factor that you factored out, and you also want to place in there the positive 5, which was your other greatest common factor. And now you can set both of these equal to 0. So let's work on the side here. And you have x minus 3 equals 0. Add 3 to both sides. What are you left with? -3 and +3 cancel out. X equals 3. Now let's work with x squared plus 5. X squared plus 5 equals 0. Subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. That leaves you with x squared equals negative 5. To solve for that, you want to take the square root of both sides of the equation. So you take the square root of x squared, take the square root of negative 5. However, we're looking for a possible solution, so it has to be a real solution, a real number. The square root of negative 5 is actually an imaginary number. You cannot have a negative inside a square root. So square root of negative 5 is not a possible solution. However, 3 from x equals 3 that is a real solution. So we'll go back to our 4 answer choices, and B is the correct answer.